I hear it all the time. I thought that interview went really well. We had a really good conversation. Yet, you don't move forward in the hiring process and you're confused. Why could that have happened? Well, today in this video, we're going to talk about why positive vibes in an interview do not necessarily mean job offers. Hi, I'm Shelley Piedmont, a former recruiter turned career coach, and I want you to thrive and not just survive your job. I hear it all the time as a career coach. People come to me and they are so confused. They have had an interview, they think it went really well, they had a good conversation, and they don't move forward. And they're perplexed. Like, how could that have possibly happened? Well, let's talk a little bit about how that does happen, because it does happen quite a lot that people are thinking they did well in an interview and actually they didn't. So let's first talk about why people think that they did well in an interview. And they're basing that on the vibes that they're feeling. So they go into an interview, the person is pleasant to them, they have a conversation that is not confrontational, the person, has got positive body language with them, nothing that seems like something is amiss, and they feel like it's an easygoing conversation, questions, answers, and it flows really well. They also feel like they did a really good job because they were very confident in that conversation. And they thought they told really good stories. And they didn't perceive anything that was negative, no negative body language or anything like that. So they go out of that interview saying, well, that was a pretty good experience, pretty positive. I'm going to move forward. And then they don't. Having a positive conversation does not mean that you've sold that person that you're a good fit for the job, because positive vibes are not the primary reason why somebody moves forward. Now, it can be one of the reasons, but many other things are way more important. And so the fact that you had a positive conversation, all good, that's good. But there's some things that you also need to think about. If you like this content, I always appreciate hitting that like button. Go ahead and subscribe to my channel and hit that notification button. That way you'll know when my next video is available. So let me tell you a little bit about how I, as a former recruiter, would approach interviews. Because when I was trained to be a recruiter, one of the things that was really talked about is oftentimes people are a little stressed when they come to an interview. It's kind of natural. So your job as the recruiter was to put them at ease. You're inviting them into your home. And so you want to make sure that they are feeling comfortable in your home. And why? Because when somebody is comfortable, they will tend to tell you more. They will tell you sometimes things that they weren't planning to tell you. They will go and touch on subjects that are really important, and sometimes they will give you more information than if they're a little closed off. So as a recruiter, I always try to make people feel really comfortable. I would look after them. I would ask about their comfort. I would ask them if they wanted something to drink. What I wanted to do was let them go, because that helped me to get the information that I needed to assess them. And because they were coming to, my place of business, or if I was talking to them virtually, I wanted to also make a positive impression on them. I wanted them to think that this was a great employer. I was also interested in making sure my employer brand was a positive one. So, what did that mean? It means that even when somebody wasn't answering their questions the way I would have liked them to, or they weren't giving me the information that I would like them to, I was always friendly. I was always positive. Now, I didn't tell people things that were untrue, but I would say for the vast majority of people, they said, "Oh, I had a really good conversation with Shelley." Even though probably 75% of the people that I personally interviewed did not move forward in the process. And I was actually trained to do that. There are people in the hiring process that are trained to do that. But there are also people that just naturally are hospitable, they're inquisitive, they want to have a good conversation with you, but through that process, you aren't to them the best candidate. They may have interviewed several others that they thought were better. Or maybe there's an internal candidate that they have their eye on, and they're looking outside of the organization to see if that person is actually better than their internal candidate, but that's a high bar. So maybe they're friendly to you because they realize, well, maybe you're not the right fit for this role, but why not talk to you? Because maybe you would be a good fit for something else as well, either now or in the future. So that could be going on as well. It could be that they have internal issues and maybe the team is not quite sure what direction they want to go in, and so they're going to talk to people and kind of get a sense of who they are, kind of compare that, and then make a decision on what direction they want to go. There could be tons of reasons why they want to have a conversation with you, why they want to get your information, but at the end of the day, you are not the person that they think is best for the job. And so, yes, they can have a great conversation with you, but they won't hire you. So, what I would tell job seekers is take that conversation with a grain of salt. Sure, it's always better to have a positive, conversation than a negative one. I take that every day of the week, because why do you need to go through something that is traumatizing to you? That's not helpful. But just because it is or seems positive doesn't mean that you've done your job. So what I would key on is what questions were asked of you. Were they more generic questions, or did they get into specifics? Were they trying to dig in to what you do and how you might do whatever you do on their job? When you get more questions and it feels like they're digging deeper into your background, your experience, your knowledge, your skills, that's a better sign that they're interested in you. Another thing to think about is how complete were the answers that you gave? Now, sometimes this is hard for a self-assessment, but when you answered a question, did you answer it completely? And what I mean is, if you're telling about experiences, are you talking about the context of that experience? Are you talking about the actions you've taken? And importantly, have you talked about the results? Lots of people think that they can talk about the context and the actions, and then they forget about the results and they think, oh, I told a really good story. No, you actually told an incomplete story. The full story would be, what was the result? Because the result is so important for the interviewer to know. That is how they can judge whether you actually can do what you say you can do. So focus on that. Another thing to focus on is the questions you ask at the end. Now, depending on where you are in the process and what role you're looking for, you may get not very much time, or you may get a lot of time to ask questions. Generally, if you are doing a good job of showing your value, they will let you ask more questions. Why? Because that's part of their process to understand more about your motivations, your interests. Those questions help them to understand if you are a fit. So if they're letting you ask questions, that generally is a good sign that they're at least thinking about you for the role. If they cut off the questions or they don't even give you time to do it, they're wrapping up everything, that's generally a sign that they don't need to go to that step in the process because they've already decided you're not a good fit and they don't want to waste their time or yours in that situation. So good vibes are, a positive thing in the interview. You certainly don't want to have it be confrontational, but that doesn't necessarily mean you've done a good job in the interview. So importantly, take good vibes with a grain of salt in assessing your performance and instead concentrate more on, did you provide value in that interview? Did you showcase that in the best way possible? That's a better way to assess how you did in an interview. So I'd love to hear your experience about feeling like you had good vibes in an interview, but it didn't turn out that way. Put those in the comments.